So there's this New Age teaching that the Apostle Paul was a false teacher, was a false apostle, was who Jesus refers to in Matthew 24 when he says, "Beware of false prophets who will come in my name." And I was intrigued by this teaching. I began to ask, how can anyone believe that in light of what the New Testament teaches? I have a serious question for anyone out there who might believe this idea that the Apostle Paul was a false teacher. How can the Apostle Paul be a false teacher when Galatians 2 tells us that Peter, John, and James endorsed the Apostle Paul? How can we call the Apostle Paul a false teacher when 2 Peter 3, as the Apostle Peter, endorses the ministry of Paul and says that his writings are apostolic and God-inspired and are the Word of God? Because think about this. I mean, if you really break down the New Testament, you have the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Matthew, written by Matthew. John, written by John. Luke, written by Luke, the Gentile physician, who was on many missionary journeys with Paul, witnessed all the things Paul did, was with Paul until he was beheaded in 60s AD. And then John Mark, which is Peter's gospel. Peter went on to write a couple epistles. John went on to write a couple of epistles and the book of Revelation. Jude, the brother of Jesus, wrote a short letter. James, the senior pastor, the half-brother of Jesus, wrote the book of James. Outside of that, the Apostle Paul wrote the rest of the New Testament. So if you're one that says that the Apostle Paul is a false teacher, was a false teacher, you have to discount pretty much the entire New Testament. And so if you call yourself a Bible-believing Christian, you have to believe in the 66 books of the Bible, not just the Old Testament. New Testament's pretty important. You also have to discount the entire book of Acts that tells the life story of the Apostle Paul and how this man was raised up by God, anointed by God to take the gospel to the Gentile world. So I come humbly and I ask the question to anybody out there who believes this New Age false teaching, help me understand how you can believe any of those lies in light of everything I just said. Because if you do, you've got to write off Peter, you've got to write off John, you've got to write off James, you've got to write off Luke, and that would really just leave like the Gospel of Matthew and the book of Jude. Because the rest of the writers of the New Testament endorsed Paul, called him a brother, exhorted the church to listen to him. So help me understand that.